Clearly, the news business has been in flux. The digital age has wreaked havoc on newspapers, and cable and social media have cut into the broadcast networks. But with the Trump age upon us, viewing habits are making wild swings. It's no secret where President Trump gets his news: Fox and Friends.
122 prisoners released from Gitmo have returned to the battlefield,
prompting Trump to tweet this: 122 vicious prisoners released by the Obama administration from Gitmo. Never mind that the decision to release most of those prisoners was made by George W. Bush. No, sir, alternative facts are here to stay, and it's hurting network news as they try to stick to the plain old facts.
The FBI in the urgent hunt tonight.
In just a year, the three network broadcasts have lost a combined 1.6 million viewers, some of whom are turning to PBS's NewsHour. But in what appears to be a if you can't fight 'em, join 'em move, CBS anchor Scott Pelley is breaking with tradition and getting into the ring, dukes up.
Today, we learned the length of the president's fuse. 28 days.
It has been a busy day for presidential statements divorced from reality.
Is it appropriate to ask whether the president is having difficulty with rationality?
That pugilistic approach might be just what the doctor ordered as more and more viewers head to cable channels for their fix of news with a slant.
Yes, I'm back.
Still, some network stars are shining. Stephen Colbert is riding a ratings high.
Experts estimate this will cover 20 million fewer Americans than Obamacare. 20 million fewer than Obama. That sounds like Trump's inauguration.
Sounds like Scott Pelley might need to try stand-up next. You know, I was thinking about this Scott Pelley thing, and there just comes a point in your journalistic career, and Scott is clearly there, where he's kind of earned the right to do this. Whether you feel he's on the money with it, he's clearly taking a slant on it. He feels that the president behaves inappropriately. He's said other things. He talked about a Twitter tantrum that he had this week. So I noticed this because I did use that soundbite of him a few weeks ago about him saying that Trump's fuse was only 28 days long. So I had noticed it, but I didn't realize. And then that interview with Leon Panetta the other day where he said, is it fair to question his rationality? And Leon Panetta paused for about 12 seconds before he answered. I'm okay with it.
I agree with that. I think he's earned the right in his career to take this sort of a stance. It actually reminds me a lot of what Jake Tapper has done on CNN, where you can see the
Cable's
edge,
a little
different. But nonetheless, Jake Tapper a year ago versus Jake Tapper today,
true.
You can see there is a harder take there. It is a very unusual circumstance to have a president who is getting so much of his news and information from a cable news show. I mean, some people have joked that CNN or Fox should start a daily show called Your Presidential Briefing that he could just watch and get all the information that he needs to get during the day. But I think it's tough to compare year-ago numbers ratings-wise because a year ago was the height of the election for the primary. So the long-term trend, though, has been pretty clear about network television news.
That's true.
Look, I like what Scott Pelley has been doing, and in this era where there's a lot of blunt talk going on, right? There are a lot of things that have been discussed here and out in the public that we had not done in the past. So I think that you have to match it to a certain extent. Where I think you can run into some trouble is if you come out with a lot of those sort of very direct and potentially biased questions, and then you don't back it up with the facts. And I think for the most part, having watched CBS and read a lot about it, I get the sense that he does. He comes out with those very strong points, but he backs it up with the facts. I want to see him do that, though, not only with the president, but also with Democrats. Or don't just focus solely on politics, but if you're talking about a business, then use that same kind of force and pointed anchor intros, if you will.
He takes the glasses off.
Exactly. But he also has a calm way of delivering it, right?
I know.
So it's like he's punching you, but you don't know it. But I want to see that happen with everything, not just when you're talking about president.
Look, I'm glad that he's come out of the closet, so to speak. Conservatives have viewed CBS News as, a propaganda arm for the left for 3 decades at least. So the fact that he's being more transparent about it, good for him. Sean Hannity does it. Every news organization, every broadcaster has their bias. He's just letting us know what his is, and that's great.
Do you think it's a bias to challenge things? Is it the phrasing that bothers you? Or, he's questioning whether Trump is rational. Is that a fair question, or is it automatically biased?
I think you can be you can have a political perspective and ask a fair question at the same time, right? So, CBS News skews left, but that doesn't mean that, and that's okay. So now he's showing us where he stands vis-a-vis this particular administration. I assume he had the same feelings about, frankly, George W. Bush. He just didn't show them quite as blatantly.
So I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that I had a problem with the way that he phrased the question to Leon Panetta, which is why Leon Panetta paused. With the other thing, backing up what Dan said, he's been very frank about what he observes as when he says something is divorced from reality. Then he says, here's the story. There it is, divorced from reality. That, to me, is not his bias. That is a strong way of saying, hey, people, this is what's going on. I don't like the divorce from whatever the rationality question was. That just feels a little bit icky to me. That's climbing over into an area I'd like him not to be in. Cleanly. It's not that it wasn't a fair question in some way. If he could, I don't know where he was going with it. I don't like that. But the other stuff, the way he said 28 days before, and then he led into a story about the president being mad and having a meltdown. Well, that wasn't wrong. So that's where I would be, and I think that as long as they're very careful around that, then okay.
I think this is intentional, and I think that they're looking to get more eyeballs back to CBS. I mean, CBS has not been they've been the number 3 newscast for decades now, I think, since Walter Cronkite, or maybe Dan Rather was one for a while. So, I mean, I think he kind of likes the fact that he's been in the spotlight this week because a lot of people are noticing this. A lot of people are talking about it.
I do agree. And, this isn't unprecedented. You brought up Cronkite.
Yeah.
Remember his opinion
the Vietnam War.
With the Vietnam War back in the late 60s. And so we've kind of gotten away from that. And I think...
Well, and there are people who argue that him ending his show every night, telling the American people what day it was of the Iranian hostage crisis, cost Carter the election. I mean, there are people who feel very strongly about that.
Right.
Wasn't that... I thought that was Koppel who did it. Koppel.
Yeah.
Oh, was it Koppel?
Yeah, Koppel.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, because that's how Nightline got going. All right.